All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Today, I'm going to be talking about Terminator. No, I'm just kidding. Today, I'm going to be talking about predicting the threats of the future in 10 years using a new form of analysis that I've done in order to bring some sort of objective lens into that idea. So to begin with, I want us to all kind of put ourselves in the context of 2028. We're in Tibet. Now, you are sick, you are a citizen of a small town in Tibet, and you need to go to the doctor. The issue is there's only one doctor in the entire town. So the doctor has to rely heavily on artificial intelligence in order to diagnose and recommend medication for a lot of their patients so that they continually get everyone through. Now, something goes wrong. The AI that actually recommends this medication is recommending the wrong stuff. And it's not only actively not alleviating the problem that you have, but it's also making it worse. Now the question you're asking yourself is, well, who's responsible for this? How could we even predict something like this from happening? And that's the question that we try to answer. So to begin with, I'll talk a little bit about myself. I'm currently a cadet at the United States Military Academy, where I major in math, whose year-long thesis you're about to see, and physics. After the academy, I will spend 2 years at MIT studying quantum information science. Afterwards, I will also branch into Army Cyber, where I will hopefully conduct further analysis on how we can do threat prediction and strategic foresight for the military. As you can see here, I like competing in cyber policy competitions put on by the Atlantic Council, and also I like to play rugby. This is, I think, 2 years ago we beat Navy. Doesn't matter, we've beaten Navy every single year for the past 4 years. Yeah, the real streak's right here, honestly. So, let's begin. Today I'm going to talk to you about something called threat casting. This was developed in conjunction with the Army Cyber Institute and ACI. Then I'll also get into the idea of how we can use threat casting for strategic foresight and conduct further objective analysis on it. And then we'll go through an example, and I'll present what future work could look like for this and take any questions you guys might have. So, to begin with, as you all know, technology can be abused for nefarious purposes, much like geeks like yourselves. And current methods of assessing what those abuse methods look like right now relies heavily on social science expertise and subject matter expertise in the field of cybersecurity. Now, my issue with this is as you can see from the bottom line, there's a gap in the quantitative and qualitative analysis for strategic foresight. So the Threat Casting Lab was developed in conjunction with Arizona State University's Future of Innovation and Society, as well as the Army Cyber Institute headquartered at West Point. And as you can see from their mission statement, it's to serve as the premier resource for strategic insight, teaching materials, and exceptional subject matter expertise to envision possible threats 10 years in the future. So right now they're looking at specifically 2028 and what those futures look like. In this case, what the threat casting process looks like is this. What they do is they look at social, technical, and specific trends within society in order to form data with opinion as they bring in subject matter experts twice a year in order to create these futures. From there, they turn the science fiction prototype into science fact through analysis, and they look at how they can recover from these events from occurring in the future. So, what you'd see normally is a 170-page technical report. This past year, they did one on artificial intelligence. The year before that, it was about automation in society. And typically, these reports contain about 100 pages worth of soft data analysis and expert opinion from leaders of industry, government, and academia. Now, I have one problem with this. Focus is too heavy on subjective analysis. And this kind of makes sense. We have a lot of leaders in artificial intelligence right now that say, one, it'll either elevate our society to new heights never seen before, or Skynet's going to happen. And really, it all depends on what your experience has been in the field of artificial intelligence. And that's something that I want to be able to bridge that gap between those two understandings so that we can find what the actual verifiable threat is. So the goal? We want to objectively analyze the futures developed by the Threat Casting Lab. So what's the solution here? Models. So, agent-based models in social simulation is a very unique and powerful programming software that can be used to create entities, autonomous entities that act given a certain set of rules that you program into the simulation. They all interact within a specific environment, and they have specific characterization tools that you can use to create very, very intricate systems that would normally not be developed in the real world. For instance, competing species systems. Are you really going to put like a group of mice and a group of hawks in the same room and watch all the hawks kill the mice? Probably not. I mean, that's cool and all, but maybe you could just simulate that. Or humans versus zombies. I think we all want to know what that looks like in the future. I don't think we really want a zombie outbreak. I mean, maybe some people do. They're weird. So, you might be asking yourself, but why agent-based models? Well, the answer to this lies in the fact that, one, they're adaptable. Agent-based models are specifically designed so that you can create any type of scenario that you want using a very interesting programming language called Groovy. Two, they're visual. There's a lot of visual capabilities that you can leverage with agent-based social simulations so that you can look at what the interactions look like in that model itself. And three, they're free. I think we can all agree that free things are better. I've seen a lot of you at the booths, so. So there are three main considerations that went into developing this model. So the first consideration is, how do we uniquely characterize the environment that these simulations happen in? And this is a very interesting question that goes a lot into kind of the idea of what does the cybersecurity field look like, what do the technology threats look like, and how can we kind of bridge those two in order to determine what the agents are going to do when they're actually placed in that environment. Two, who plays a role in this scenario? What are the agents specifically that are going to be in this scenario? And finally, three, how can we best create this model so that it is actually reflective of what we see in cybersecurity and society as a whole? So we've gone and set out for the past year or so of determining three main factors that go into this model. First are the technology factors. And essentially what we're doing is we want to model and analyze what the threat posed by emerging technologies looks like in the future. So we've developed these 10, maybe I can count, specific technology factors that we believe characterize technology and society. Some of these might be very intuitive to you, such as implementation costs. I think we can all recognize that. Some of these might be a little bit more difficult, such as what does ability to unify mean? Or what does ability to secure mean? So what you do is you take these models and you'd apply them to a specific domain. As you can see here, the domains that we have listed of where these technologies would apply is something like the critical infrastructure as listed by Presidential Policy Directive 21. Or what you traditionally consider space, cyber, air, and land. Not sea, because the Navy doesn't matter. And then finally, we have 4 specific agents that actually go into this model. The first is what you consider your traditional malicious actor, the attacker. Next, you have the defender, geeks like yourselves that try to actually create systems that are robust so that they cannot be attacked. And finally, you have the user of the technology, everyday people, maybe the government, maybe a hospital. And then you have what we consider almost a pseudo node or a pseudo agent called a tech node. And the tech node is the agent by which every single other agent in the simulation interacts with one another. And this is kind of what you'd see in regular society, right? You need some sort of physical medium in order to conduct an attack on any other system. So the tech node serves as that proxy to conduct the attack. So I'm going to go through a little bit of an example developed by the Threat Casting Lab last year. And from there, we're going to apply this business process in order to see what this type of analysis looks like. The simulation is called 2 Days After Tuesday. Hopefully it scares the pants off you. So we have Bill. Bill is an employee of Red Hook, an employee at the Red Hook port in New York. Bill's responsible for the shipping of goods to and from locations in New York City. However, there's way too many goods that they're trying to ship out in the year 2028 because it's a consumer world. So Bill has to rely heavily on his artificial intelligence scanners in order to conduct security scans at the port for things that are coming in. However, these scanners suck. They constantly break down. These scanners don't know. The shipping parts always have to come in multiple times. Because of this, Bill complains about them quite a bit. Now, what Bill doesn't know is underneath the surface of all this happening, there's a phishing attack that occurred with one of his employees at the port. Because of this, the malicious actor that has now gained access into the communications network of the Red Hook port can see when Bill is complaining about the stupid scanners. And in addition to that, they have an AI-assisted web crawler in order to determine what type of vulnerabilities might exist on this system. So they see the word AI or they see the word scanner and they think, Here's the window of opportunity. So what do? They pass a command to the automated resource movement system to order milk and bananas. Now, milk and bananas are a perishable good, so they're prioritized over all other items that would go normally through the Red Hook port. So they order milk and bananas for every single household in New York City. Now, this takes up a lot of the port's resources, and now suddenly, because of this, you can't get the artificial intelligence scanning parts that you want in order to conduct further security scans on your port. So they let something sneak by. This is the perfect window of opportunity for a kinetic attack to occur. What you have here is you have a radioactive substance known as a dirty bomb passing through the port because the AI scanners were not able to pick it up because they had to resort to manual checks on these items. And because manual checks take a long time, they're not going to check every single thing that goes through that port. So the bomb detonates in New York City. Chaos reigns. Stock markets plummet. Global war on terror number 2 is declared. As you can see, this is a terrifying scenario. Millions are dead. We don't want this to happen. The end. Now that you guys are sufficiently terrified of all dirty bombs and artificial intelligence, let's go through an analysis of what this situation actually looks like from an objective frame. So to begin, we'll start with the 3 variables here. You have the AI security scanners, the automated resource movement tech node, and then the communications network used by Bill and his employees. What you want to look at is the variables specifically, these levels for each different tech node. So what I'm going to look at is the levels and the effect that this variable has on the simulation. The levels here are going to be recorded on a scale of 1 to 10, sort of akin to a Likert scale. This is where we bring the subjective analysis from subject matter expertise in the cybersecurity field into the objective framework. So we'll start with the AI security scanners. We have a dependency level of 7, which is what causes these security issues to pop up in the first place, is because they're so dependent on this technology in order to conduct these scans at the port. In addition to that, the upkeep cost is huge for a technology like this. Level 10. Because of this, the parts keep breaking down. As you can see, this creates a window of opportunity to sneak something kinetic into the port. Now you have the automated resource movement node. As you can see here, there are 3 main high levels that affect this simulation. You have the level 10 dependency. Everything depends on the automated resource movement in order to continue, which is why it can be used as a tool of manipulation to give access or move commands through the system. Then you also have the unification factor of the automated resource movement, which is essentially what allows the attacker to have access to every single other tech node, such as the AI security scanner and the comms network, and what allows them to gain this sort of autonomy to do what they want in the system. And then finally, you have the communications network itself used by the employees. Now, the dependency on comms, I would be surprised if we moved to a society that just never talked to each other, but there's a high level of dependency on communications network, which is what allows for that surveillance in order to determine where that vulnerability is. In addition to this, there's a medium level of user savviness, which is what allows the attackers to essentially conduct a phishing attack, because as much as we'd like to think the general population knows when to spot a phishing attack, it's probably not the case. And then you have the unification of the comms, which is what allows to unify the automated resource movement, which is not just regular communication between employees, but also between systems and creating a smart automated system in order to ship goods out. But in addition to that, this is what allows for that monitoring to occur. Of note, there are no defenders in this future. There's nobody here to actually secure the system, at least not in this scenario right now. And anything that you see here that says NA, it just means it didn't have an effect on the simulation for that specific tech node. So the attacker itself is what we characterize as state-sponsored terrorism. They're more patient, they have better capabilities, and their end goal is destabilization in this case. So now let's go through what the interaction diagram would look like in this simulation. So to begin with, we'll start with the tech nodes. So as you can see here, we have the artificial intelligence communication scanner used by the attacker so that they can crawl and look for the different vulnerabilities that they're trying to seek. Then you have the AI security scanners used by the port in order to determine whether or not something is radioactive, etc. And then you have the automated resource movement tech node itself, which is what ships goods to and from every location. So nested in between the automated resource movement system and the AI comm scanner is, first you also have the communications network, which is the compromised technology in this case, as well as the security sensor up here, which is a part of the AI security system as a whole. Nested in between these two is the state-sponsored terrorist itself. And in addition to this, you also have the two other users that are involved in this scenario. In this case, you have the Red Hook port, which are the employees, and you also have the New York smart appliances that are the ones ordering this milk and bananas. So let's start with the connection that Red Hook has with the other two tech nodes, the AI security and the automated resource movement. Because of the unification factor of the ARM, there's a high level of unification between each different tech node, so there's a link between them. In addition to that, the ARM is also going to be linked to the New York smart appliances because that's what's communicating with them to ship these goods. Now here comes the malicious actor. They conduct a phishing attack. They get access into the communications network, which inadvertently gives them access as well into the ARM and the AI security. This is what allows them to conduct surveillance on the Red Hook port communications network, which then, in turn, they find a vulnerability and they pass a command through. What this command does is it inadvertently pauses the AI security scanners from getting new parts. So you might be asking yourself, all right, well, this sucks. Where can we place a defender? Where would you guys place a defender? Does anyone have any ideas? Maybe somewhere like here, or here, or here, or here. Yep.
Probably between the security and the appliances, maybe?
Right here?
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thought. Previous times people have answered this question, they've given something like this. Personally, I thought, well, let's put our superstar defender right there. Because what if we were allowed to put our superstar defender so that it monitored traffic between the smart appliances as well as the automated resource system in order to see whether or not a command such as milk and bananas at every single home in New York is really a legitimate command. So this is something to kind of think about, is that the power of this type of objective analysis is like, as you said, you could put it here, or you could put it here. What's nice is that we now have a framework to look at it and look at maybe different avenues of approach of how to mitigate these problems. So my vision for this project is that we want to develop this model into a business process. I believe that this is something that strategic foresight firms can use in order to determine how they want to look at threats in the future so that they're not bogged down by groupthink or other types of problems that would only give them one avenue of approach. In addition to this, I hope that we could improve the military's ability to adapt to future warfare challenges. The threat plane right now is widening. As you can see, it does not take a lot for you to gain access into a system or to cause damage into that system as it did before. In addition to that, we have a lot of non-traditional actors that have come onto the scene that are causing a lot of havoc. And my goal is that we could develop new tactics, techniques, and procedures, there's your military buzzword, in cyberspace based on the type of analysis that we can do here. Now, if you have any thoughts about where you think this project could go, or maybe about the scenario itself, and maybe how we could develop the scenario so it's better reflective of society, I would love to hear them. My email's right down there. It's just first name dot last name, or last name dot first name. So finally, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Charles McCall and Dr. Ozick at Argonne National Lab. They helped me with developing this model, as well as looking at the protocols that you could do for this model. Dr. Pulley Blank at the United States Military Academy, and Bride David Johnson at Arizona State University. He heads the Threatcasting West workshop over there. And of course, finally, our benevolent overlords, BSidesCharm. So I'll now take any questions that you guys might have. Yep. Well, so you have to get the dirty bomb somehow into the United States in the first place. I mean, that would be very impressive. If they could find the special nuclear material in order to actually harvest that and develop it in the U.S., that would be, I mean, more. The question was, so why don't they just drive the truck from somewhere native to the U.S. into the port? Or somewhere into the city. And my answer to that would be, it's much more difficult to develop a dirty bomb in the US than it is to develop it outside and ship it into the port. This was just one specific scenario of something that might happen. Any more questions? Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like your initial predictions, you made a generalization. You call it respecting the technical use of those. There's standards and other things that are actually influencing. So that model right there is going to have major variations, just like in weather, because your initial conditions are actually off. I found interesting. From an Asian standpoint, looks like you didn't include politics at the Asian level and business objectives. So those are actually two major objectives based on good or bad products.
You're absolutely right. No.
Supply chain is actually one, two, three levels deep.
Right, so that actually gets into the other part of this analysis. This is more the brunt of the work that I've been doing for this year-long project, is other considerations that we have to look at, which are technical and strategic considerations. So yes, there are politics that play into this and other financial movements that actually play into this type of scenario, and that's something that we're trying to explore is, what does this look like? And one of the questions we actually tackled when you talk about the generalizations is, how specific should each node be? What's the granularity that we want on these tech nodes? Because, I mean, if you think about it, say we have a vulnerability in the way that Microsoft Word starts up each time. Well, is that really something that we want to model in this case for this simulation? That's very specific to Microsoft Word. So how do we be able to adapt that to strategic foresight as a whole? Yeah, I'll take one down and I'll come back to you later. Right, yeah. So the intent of this project was to actually remove personal bias from subject matter experts by developing this framework for them to use. So in this case, you're right, my personal bias does come into this, but the idea is with all methodologies of bringing soft science into the hard science and using numbers, there's going to be some sort of level of subject matter expertise that you need to be able to quantify, which is why we're trying to minimize that as much as possible by doing something like this. But it is a very important concern. You have another question? Okay, yep. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yep. Yeah, no. Thank you for asking those. So the point of this year-long project was actually to address not just AI, obviously. We use a specific case study here of AI, and you're right, there is something important about the supply chain that could potentially mitigate this risk. But it's to look at all technologies in the future, such as quantum computing or any of the other technologies that you might see out there that could potentially affect society as a whole. And that's when we apply the framework to look at, well, what did this look like in the simulation itself? And as to your supply chain comment, is that's important, right? Like, did the visualization tool help you recognize that maybe there are some supply chain mitigation techniques that you can use in order to prevent something like this from happening? And if it did, then yes, that is very good, and we've done our job here. Yep.
So one thing I'm interested in asking is, have you or anyone on your team been to talk to people that actually work in and around stock, specifically stock workers and law enforcement? And I ask that because the human intelligence that you can gather from that would help fill in any holes that you have in your analysis.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking that. So my advisor, Colonel Natalie Venata, sitting right back there, she developed this specific scenario. She did talk to dock workers. But you're right, this is part of the process, is if we're going to do this, we need to actually talk with people on the ground in order to see what their expertise in it is. Yep. So it's a little bit of a mix of both. So yes, we're bringing in leaders of industry, government, and academia in order to see what feasibly could happen 10 years down in the future. And then from there, that's when we're conducting our mitigation techniques and trying to figure out how we can solve those issues. So there is a prediction aspect of this, which is what we're doing. We're predicting 10 years in the future, what these scenarios could look like. Maybe there's a feasibility analysis that we're conducting on that and a likelihood analysis based on politics and whatnot. And then from there, we're doing that mitigation